star, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Occult October. We are doing something today that I have wanted to do as soon as the curved walls came out. Now whether that has been done successfully, because the curved walls are, and I mean this with all due respect, incredibly glitchy and quite difficult to work with, but we are making like a proper castle with some turrets and things in there. But because I didn't necessarily know, like there isn't necessarily that much furniture in The Sims that feels like it could really furnish like a kind of castle-y area, what we're doing instead is we've kind of made it like a museum. So as we go through it later, there'll be certain rooms where we've kind of cornered it off and staged it to look like what it might have looked like before, and kind of go through in that area. So I've been trying to think of like what it might be a museum to, and while I was building, trying to find objects and things that we could go through. So the occult element of it is going to be spellcastery, and I'll go through it a little bit as we go through each room, because I am challenging myself somewhat to do a voiceover for 22 minutes when I still have a COVID cough. So if there's a random pause of silence, it is because I cut out a massive coughing fit. So I've used a lot of the terrain in this. I don't tend to do much terrain with builds. I really should do more of it, to kind of build up this like area in the middle and then give it a moat, because you know you can't have a good castle without a moat. And then to try and work out some stairs which were faffing me around, and now we start faffing around with curved walls. So they immediately glitched out into the terrain, which was helpful. They wouldn't connect up properly, and I don't know if something I did or not. None of this would connect up to what I had in the front, and there were points where I felt like I had to make a square and add the circle and remove the outside walls. It became quite a faff of things to do. They aren't necessarily the most intuitive part of building at the moment with The Sims, and you can't follow this wall up here. Like I tried to copy the whole layer on top and it wasn't having it for some reason, and then when I tried to like build the wall on the second floor again, obviously the curved walls, there isn't a like part of the tool that allows you to curve around, so just had to kind of try and put a new room up there and faff around. And then I was trying to make a bunch of turrets, and I changed my mind because it looked more like factory flumes, and put one over to the side here as kind of like a turret off to the side, and trying to faff around with getting some kind of bridge. Basically, a lot of this beginning part of the build is me desperately faffing about trying to get some kind of outer shell, because I think later as well we have problems with like the doors glitching out on the curved walls and all kinds of fun. And we're going with a kind of nice grey brick with a nice strong looking foundation, because obviously this has been here for a little while, but we are going to be adding kind of more modern elements in some respects. So there's going to be like, I think I had like a safety rail to certain places. So there's going to be a few like modern amenities, like they've converted a part of the upstairs to potentially be a sort of bathroom that you wouldn't have had that way in the house before. It probably has gone through some renovations before, because there's a lot less rooms, but they're bigger than I'd probably expect if this was actually your kind of castle. It's probably more of like a small barracks at some point than a living space. But so actually putting the walls over the curved walls, again, it doesn't follow it on the roof, but it does give us kind of a lip effect, which in a minute we're going to add some corbels to. And actually for this build, it does work quite well. So it does kind of more look castle-y up there, and then just using like a nice white plain bit on the top just so it doesn't stand out too dramatically, and then putting a load of corbels around it, which I actually had a lot of fun doing. The idea of this is that there is a family who has owned it for years and years and years. They maybe were part of some form of like aristocracy. I know The Sims doesn't have anything like that, but and they are a spellcaster family, and the kitchen that we'll go into a little bit later, the idea is that maybe they were doing some dodgy things with some poisons. So maybe they were giving out some poisons in the correct way, or not poisons, but like herbal remedies and helping people and cooking up all of these things that they would want people to to be able to like heal themselves with. But then there are also sort of a more dark and shady side. So later we're going to put in like a secret area where they might have started like working out how to do certain potions for potentially not as beneficial. So the main museum part is kind of dedicated to kind of the family and all that kind of stuff, and then there'll be a few darker areas around. As you probably just saw then, I was trying to break the ceiling. I don't know if it's the curved walls. I probably should stop blaming them for everything, but it took away far more of the floor for some reason, so that was faffed around with. And then just adding like a little fence around, which again, this would probably be more of an actual like stone wall back in the day. It's probably been refurbed at some point. I imagine if we were going with like a real life thing and not necessarily a Sims thing, that there may have been a point when they were like in the equivalent of like the 1800s, early 1900s, someone bought the house and wanted to like do it up and do different bits and pieces to it. This is where we try and get doors to work in the curved walls. And the camera doesn't help me with any of this. So eventually I end up having to like force extra bridge on just to get somewhere, because for some reason that part allowed me to have a full door, and on other parts the door would disappear and would not return. So again, trying to build around this, getting rid of a lot of the curves in a lot of that part just so I can put a fence on, because it still annoys me that I can't put a fence on the curves. And again, but I think, well, yeah, we didn't stick with the fence. We went back to the kind of turrety effect on the walls as well. I do really like this. I don't know why I enjoy doing that quite as much as I do. And I think it lined up almost perfectly, both the roof and on the bridge bit there. But we do start playing around with doors. Because I've had a curved wall going into a flat part of the wall, there's only like one tile there where I can fit a door in, and I really wanted it like centered, and it just isn't going to have it. And we have the same problem down here, so much so that because I can't move upstairs, I'm pretty sure I give up with that down there and I move that later. Because yeah, I can put it on one tile or I can put it on the other, but if I try and center it between the two, it just goes black, and I don't know why. So we're going to move where the door comes out there. And then in this little fenced area, I was like, right, what would we have if we're going with kind of like a modern equivalent? What would we have in like a big open garden? I was like, oh, you have like gardens you can walk around in. And then I went and I thought maze. So we make a maze and we are going to kind of hide certain bits and pieces in there. So there's going to be like statues of people. I used a few of the statues to kind of represent possibly the family. So there's kind of a vampire one with a woman that has kind of cloaks around her arms. I've kind of got her down as one of like the figureheads of the family, and basically any like the founder statues, anything like that gets kind of used here. I'm pretty sure this maze is actually like, there's obviously a route to get to the right place. I'm pretty sure there's actually a few dead ends in there as well. So I had a bit of a fun time working that out. And then the idea is you'd get to this kind of center bit in the middle, and we're going to add later in like, a statue that you'd be aiming for as you were going through the maze. It's not a complicated maze, but I could imagine like if they've got tourists, you might have like you might bring your kids and walk around a little bit. It's very small, but you'd have a little bit of fun going through it. And then at the end, there's more of the kind of gardeny area that you can have a little bit of a walk around. So just terrain painting up, which again, I've been doing a lot more than I used to, but I really, really like that purple one from Cottage Living. And then the other one's just kind of sparse and deliberately trying not to touch too much of under the hedges, so it looks like there's like dirt under there in some places. And this is I attempted to do small down statues and then realised they weren't going to fit. But essentially putting lots of like gargoyle-y things in, a little bit creepy. And then the woman at the end there is what you'd be able to see as you were leaving the castle, as like the thing you were aiming for in the maze. And a few seating places when you do manage it. And of course, lighting. I imagine like potentially you could do Halloween-y kind of maze trips and kind of do this up a little bit for that kind of feel. And then I can't put trees under there because I gave myself a bridge and I have to tie them down dramatically. So a few small trees, a few small bushes, and essentially this is kind of like more of a gardeny area. So you'd get to the middle of the maze and then you'd be able to walk through, and maybe they've got like some specific plants here that have been, you know, grown as part of the household for so long, or they're like protected species of something. So people come have a look at that. But otherwise, just a nice little garden with a few plants and things. I think I cage it all in with kind of fences and stuff. So while I work on that, the other thing to talk about coming up soon is that the Sims 4 game is going to go free to play this week. If I'm correct, this is coming out on the 16th and the base game goes free on the 18th. If you already have the base game, you are entitled to a free kit, which not everyone necessarily will want. You may not want to use up any more space on your computer, depending on how many, like me, you have downloaded. But if you do want that, I believe you have until the 18th to do that. So if you haven't already and you do want the Desert Luxe kit, which is kind of like a neutral, predominantly outside kit, if I remember correctly, go and grab that now before it disappears, or doesn't disappear, but before it stops being free for you. And then when the base game comes out for free, if you don't have the base game and you do want it, you can go get that. I will be hopefully releasing a base game build at some point this week, or the upcoming week, just to kind of play on that idea of it's free now, so here's something you could download into your game if you did want to. And I think we're moving away from the occult a little bit there, and we're going to do more of a kind of family home, I would say, with more of an autumn vibe. But unfortunately, a lot of the autumn vibe stuff comes with seasons, so there may just it's just vibes. It's just vibes, no Halloween, just vibes. So we have finished off the garden bits in the back, and we've done some more sort of trees here. There was a significant period of time faffing around with the front. I really wanted to use these debug fences, and so I basically went through debug and I pulled out a bunch of different things that I might want to use, and a couple of different fences to try and work out what I fancied. And we did faff a lot. I have cut out a lot of me not knowing what the hell I was doing during this build. It was about 5 hours in the end of recording, which I usually spend 2 or 3 on a build. So for me, this is starting to get a little excessive, but I had TV on. I was enjoying myself immensely. I didn't do it all in one go. I did it in a few different spurts, but yeah, I'm basically just littering up this area with a few different things that I might want, and then I settle on these fences and find as many variations as I can so that I can hopefully build around this. And this allows me to have a little bit more curve. That's why I want to go debug fences rather than the main fences, because the main fences has no ability to curve anything around. And with the kind of way that the build was coming out, with a small amount of curve and then also some hard lines, I liked that the fence could kind of reflect that a little bit more if it was debug than just the normal fences. But you are welcome. I have cut out hours of me going back and going nope. Reversing things and trying again. But I was trying to work out how it's not this bit in the front with the fencing isn't a secure fencing. This is more just a, you know, we can put it here because we can spend some money. Aren't we a grand family who can do this? But then I was faffing around with the terrain paint. There is definitely some faffing still in this video. Yeah, I believe I just stopped and just cut that side off. That is the only thing that I think is the reason why I don't do terrain paint as much, is that it makes like putting certain plants on there awkward. It makes putting objects on there particularly awkward. So I think I try a few more times and I just stop and put it on the flat piece of ground. There we go. I've given up. And then leading it up to the stairs. And I think, again, because of terrain paints, I couldn't fit everything in properly. I think we end up using hedges in some of these parts to kind of bridge the gap, where I don't want a wall floating in the air. There we go. As much fun as that would be, and as much as spooky as that might be for the kind of spellcaster element, I just couldn't bring myself to have that float. So we're gonna use some of that stuff that I brought out there for the rest of the debug and just do some more terrain paint. And then around here, we're gonna have a little pond. I don't know why I wanted a little pond. I just really had the idea of having like a little front pond here where there'd be like a little few ducks. I'm just trying to think of things that as a kid, like if I'd gone to like a stately home with my family, what might have I seen? What might I want to do? Like if theoretically you could just sit by this pond for a little bit, or if you live in the area, they probably don't deter people from, you know, being out in the grounds, but maybe you have to pay an entrance fee for the museum. So you might, you know, come around here and just look at the little pond bit, go sit in the gardens kind of thing. So I did notice as I was recording the intro part of this, I've got some of my B-roll, some of the one of the animal bits that goes on the moat is currently floating, and I don't think I fixed that, so I don't know how that would work in gameplay. If I'm honest, I haven't really done much gameplay with the animals in the ponds, because I tend to build more, so I don't know whether that means that we'll just have a load of fish or whatever it is just hanging up in the sky. I don't know. So we're coming inside. We're using a lot of the sort of similar lighting, because again, if I imagine this to be more kind of like a museum now, and I can imagine that there's like, they had to refurb a lot of the old stuff, there's a lot more, I feel like, consistency. If you have to refurb all of this, you probably would, you know, go out for a batch of lights and try and make that work. There is a light there. There's multiple lights there. Nikki. Multiple lights there that don't have a ceiling. So let's pretend, for the purposes of this, there's a longer cord and it is going up to the ceiling. I'm very bad at that. I need to get better at cutting that sort of stuff out. As in, like, when I cut the ceilings out, making sure that actually everything lines up properly, or there's like a spandrel or something for it to hang off of. So as you see, I did change the lights in the upstairs a little bit, something different. And then I've got these kind of like these little gold book, and I've put them everywhere. In the UK, when you go to these kind of places, I don't know if it's the same everywhere, you will quite often have like a plaque or a bit of information about the rooms and about why they're set up the way they are, or like about the family. So I imagined that in each of those there's something you can read to kind of get an idea of what's going on, and a bunch of security cameras, because you never know when someone might try and steal the really precious piece of artwork off the wall or anything. So at the beginning we've got kind of like a dining space with just a few sort of ornamental things, and then this was the kitchen. Again, I don't know if it's the curved walls, but I was really struggling. If I put a kitchen piece in that space, firstly they weren't letting me put it in that space, and secondly I couldn't then put stuff on top of it, I think, or I couldn't move it around very easily. So this is where we start getting the vibe of the family. So those jars, I imagine it either they made some kind of production, so maybe they made like coffees or something, or they did make tonics for people, but then, you know, they were also using it for nefarious purposes and maybe like overthrowing certain people in the maybe the town or city they were in, so that they could have some power. Just imagine it's kind of like power hungry spellcasting family, but like very subtly power hungry. Like they're not necessarily like overtly going for anything. They're not like running for elections or anything, but they do have particular maybe candidates that they support, and the other candidates just get ill sometimes. It's just very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. So as you see, downstairs I tried to put a little toilet in there, and I didn't like it. So up here we're adding one in. This is probably one of the more modern elements that has been added. And that's why they've got probably the most modern lights as well. And then here I imagine like a little bedroom, and again maybe a little plaque about the family. Staged bedrooms are very, very common in kind of stately homes and things in the UK. But yeah, I imagine this kind of like long family reign of faffing around with everyone in the village and or city, and basically having far more power than anyone realizes they do. But they're just praised for their production, and they did so many good things for the town, and they built this big house out in there with all of the money that they got from doing all the good things they did. That's the kind of vibe we're going for. And I don't think we've got much more. I'm just going to check. No, we've got a couple more minutes of it, I think. So just littering up with artwork. What I do like about the way that the art in The Sims work is there's quite a bit of consistency about the people in there. So there are a few where you've got them sort of individually, and then you've got them as a couple in a painting. So playing around with putting more statues places, and a flag. Just fancied a flag. by this point I was like, I just want to make it look like there's like little additions. And then this is kind of the room that will be locked to the public on certain occasions, but is open. And again, it's just like a nice little study. Nobody gets to look at the books that are on the bookshelf. Nobody gets to see what those are. But you do get to see where maybe, you know, the head of the household used to work, or the woman that I've been putting in all the different places, maybe she was sat here studying away. Sorry, I appear to have hiccups now. And again, these are all of the different tonics they would give all the people. Like they pioneered so much healing. It's amazing. And then somewhere in these books, somewhere, and in that journal, are a few of the nefarious purposes. So we're going to go into the tour, but I will say thank you so much for watching. I've been Nikki Starr, and I will see you in the next one.